Damn fine. Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. Welcome back to See You in the Funny Papers. We are well and truly overdue for a video, but thank you for your patience on this hiatus. I was percolating ideas and videos and well and truly overthinking what the next video would be, how would I do it, and so forth. But anyway, I thought the better and the quicker I pump these out, the less thinking I do. So that being said, let's have a look at today's video. It's going to be the video covering Doug Wright, and specifically the new Collected Doug Wright Volume 2, which has been well and truly in the works from the producers of the first volume. But also I thought I'd take the time and show you some of the other books available, including the first volume and these two beautiful Nipper volumes. There's a third volume I don't currently own. But anyway, that being said, let's take a look at these gorgeous looking books. Now, if you're a fan of comic strip classics like Charles Short's Peanuts, Lynn Johnson's For Better or For Worse, or the all-time classic Gasoline Alley by Frank King, this is definitely something you should look into. So these are the strips by Canadian cartoonist Doug Wright. Besides that distinctive and gorgeous splash of red you see throughout all the strips in the book, the strip is about a nuclear family of four set in Canada during the 1950s, 1960s and 1970s, and they feature this nuclear family in a series of very relatable situations, whether it's something as simple as kids playing outside, or going to the grocery store, or on vacation. And you can see the hijinks they get up to, which is really comical. The most distinctive thing you probably noticed as well is that there is no actual word balloons for this strip, which means that it's all depicted with action and pantomime. Now, physically, to give you a demonstration, both books side by side, Volume 1 is the red one. It's fairly larger compared to the smaller Volume 2, which is brown. Volume 1 was released by Drawn & Quarterly back in 2009, with intention for Volume 2 to eventually get released. It wasn't until 2023 that it was actually backed with a crowdsourcing campaign, and then just recently, now in 2024, released with a physical copy to those who backed the campaign. And as far as dimensions, the Volume 1, the red one, is about 30 centimeters wide by 38 centimeters high, which equates to about roughly 11 inches wide, 15 inches high, and it runs at 242 pages. Volume 2 also runs at 242 pages, and that's the brown one, slightly smaller, with dimensions of 24 centimeters wide, 31 centimeters high, or in inches, that's roughly 9.5 inches wide by 12 inches high. The other two smaller Nipper volumes, which I have here, as well as the third one, which I don't have, run at 112 pages each, and they're about the size of 20 centimeters wide by 13 centimeters high, or that's roughly about 8 inches wide by 5 inches high. These books were notoriously well priced by Drawn & Quarterly back in 2009, with the first volume of the Collected Doug Wright running at $40 US, and the slightly smaller Nipper volumes running at $16.95 each. All 5 books in total are collected by Brad Mackay, who's a Ottawa-based writer and journalist, not to mention the director of the Doug Wright Awards for Canadian Cartooning, which he co-founded with cartoonist Seth. The other co-collaborator of these gorgeous books is the aforementioned Canadian cartoonist Seth. So if you've never heard of cartoonist Doug Wright, or Nipper, or Doug Wright's Family, the cartoon strip, here's a bit of background information to help you understand what makes these books so special. So cartoonist Doug Wright was born in England, in Dover, in 1917, during World War I. His father passed away soon after, and Wright went on to eventually become a self-taught artist, with only having a brief sojourn in art school. He eventually grows up and decides to move to Montreal, Canada in 1938, looking for work prospects and to escape the looming threat that is World War II. Ultimately, 1942 happens and war is inevitable, so Wright ends up involving himself in the war effort. After crashing an Avro Anson fighter plane, he ends up getting reassigned as an RCAF navigation instructor, and during that time he actually manages to produce several comic strips for the local service magazine. Eventually the war ends in 1945, Doug Wright returns to civilian life, but under his belt he's had a few years of experience now with illustration and comic strip skills, and he's now on the hunt for a new job as a cartoonist. Unfortunately, his job hunt doesn't go so well, and a lot of the newspaper strips in both America and Canada are rejecting his strip ideas, so he eventually returns back home to Montreal. After a few more years of chipping away at several other jobs, and as well as being freelance, he decides to quit his daytime job and go full-time on freelance. It's not until 1948 that another very popular Canadian cartoonist, Jimmy Freeze, passes away and leaves his comic strip titled Juniper Junction with no cartoonist to take over the role immediately. Doug Wright seizes this opportunity and ends up taking on the role as the cartoonist who carries on Juniper Junction. And then within a year he ends up being able to launch his own comic strip, which he titles Egghead. Egghead is a bit of a proto-Nipper comic strip. It's done in a very similar vein to what you see with Charles Schulz's Peanuts or Hank Ketcham's Dennis the Menace. But bear in mind, this is like a full year and a half before Charles Schulz ends up debuting Peanuts in 1950. All the while, the seeds of the comic strip that will eventually be called Nipper is starting to form in Doug Wright's imagination and drawing board, and then eventually the character is born. Around this time, Doug Wright in his personal life starts to fall in love with a lady named Phyllis Sanford, and she eventually marries him in 1951, and the couple then eventually welcomes their firstborn son. Back to the drawing board, Wright has now developed the Nipper comic strip, and he starts to introduce this one distinctive key colour of red, which he delicately interweaves throughout each of the panels to delicately draw the attention of the reader's eye. The years start to go on, and the family welcomes 2 more sons into it, with Doug Wright now being known as Canada's best-known cartoonist, with his comic strips gaining more and more popularity from the readers of The Weekend magazine. However, 1965 comes around and Doug Wright is not feeling happy about the treatment of his strip by The Weekend magazine's sister imprint, so Doug decides to uproot his entire family and instead relocate to Ontario, Canada. Doug Wright then also moves his comic strip over to Canadian magazine now, and to avoid legal hassles, the strip gets renamed from what was previously called Nipper to now be called Doug Wright's Family. Brad Mackay has done a fantastic job of the introductions in all 4 of the books I've got here, so I'd highly recommend seeking them out, but all in all, the one thing you can gather by reading all this is that cartoonist Doug Wright's career comic strip spanned over 3 decades and over 1,664 strips, which is a phenomenal accomplishment, making Doug Wright a national treasure and one of the greatest cartoonists of the 20th century. So folks, these are gorgeous books, and I really do recommend trying to seek them out. Even if you just have one in your collection, it'll definitely improve your overall library. Now, as of recording this video in June 2024, the first 2 Nipper volumes are still available on Diamond's website, so I recommend reaching out to your local comic shop and asking if they can order them in. Volume 1 is not available anymore on Diamond, but you can also seek that out online through a number of various online retailers. Volume 2 is not yet available at this point, but if you back the crowdsourcing campaign, you will have received your copy. But if you're interested in Volume 2, I'd recommend either looking up online to see if there's any retailers that stock extra copies of Volume 2, or if you reach out to Drawn & Quarterly Library, they have copies available for sale. Also, before I forget, I also want to give a massive shout out to my local comic shop, Quality Comics, here in Perth, Western Australia. I've been going to them for over a decade, and they always have stocked me with some of my absolute favourite books in my collection, including these 2 smaller Nipper volumes. So thanks to Keith and Anna Marie. Thanks again for watching, folks. These gorgeous Doug Wright books are a worthy addition to your library. If you can find them, seek them out online or through your local bookshops. In Australia, we have a bit of a limited option, so we have to rely upon online or through your local comic shop, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, see if you can find any copies before they completely dry up and are harder to find. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the funny papers.